In 1932, a nation went to war, not against another country, not against an invading army, but against birds. This is the story of the Great Emu War, one of the strangest military operations in modern history. After the devastation of World War I, thousands of Australian veterans returned home. Many were given land in Western Australia under a government settlement scheme. The idea was simple: reward soldiers with farmland and help boost the nation's wheat production. The land was harsh, dry, and unforgiving. But these men had survived the trenches of Europe. They believed they could survive anything. What they weren't prepared for were emus. The emu, native to Australia, is the second largest bird in the world after the ostrich. It can grow up to 6 feet tall. It can run at speeds of nearly 50 kilometers per hour. And it can travel long distances in search of food and water. Every year after breeding season, tens of thousands of emus migrated inland from the coast. In 1932, around 20,000 emus began moving into the Campion district of Western Australia, right into newly established wheat farms. The birds were hungry. They trampled crops. They tore down fences. They opened pathways and barriers that allowed rabbits, already a major pest, to flood into farmland. Entire fields were destroyed. For struggling farmers already battling drought and economic hardship during the Great Depression, it was catastrophic. They demanded help. And so, in November 1932, the Australian government did something extraordinary. It sent in the military. The operation was approved by Australia's Minister of Defence, George Pearce. The mission was placed under the command of Major G.P.W. Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery. The weapon of choice, 2 Lewis machine guns, and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. The goal was simple: kill enough emus to reduce their numbers and protect the wheat fields. What followed was anything but simple. On November 2, 1932, the soldiers set up their machine guns near a group of about 50 emus. They expected an easy victory. Instead, they encountered something unexpected. The emus scattered, not randomly, but in small, coordinated groups. When the gunfire began, the birds broke into smaller units and sprinted in different directions, making it nearly impossible to target them effectively. The machine guns jammed. The birds escaped. Days later, the soldiers attempted an ambush near a dam where emus were known to gather. This time, nearly 1,000 emus appeared. It was the perfect opportunity. The soldiers waited. They opened fire. And once again, chaos. The emus bolted in every direction. Dust filled the air. The gun jammed after only a few rounds. When it was finally working again, the birds were already out of range. Only a handful were killed. Major Meredith later described the emus as possessing remarkable maneuverability. He noted that even when wounded, many birds managed to run long distances before collapsing. The emus were fast, tough, and surprisingly resilient. Determined to succeed, the soldiers mounted a machine gun onto a truck, hoping to chase the birds across the fields. But the terrain was rough. The truck bounced violently over uneven ground. It was impossible to aim accurately. At one point, the vehicle became so unstable that the gunner couldn't fire safely. The emus simply outran them. Reports began to circulate in the press. Newspapers mocked the operation. Headlines suggested that Australia was losing a war against birds. Public opinion shifted. The emus, unintentionally, became symbols of resistance. After 6 days of effort and thousands of rounds fired, the official count was disappointing. Estimates suggested only a few hundred emus had been killed. The military withdrew. The first phase of the Great Emu War was over, and it had failed. Farmers continued to suffer heavy crop losses. Under mounting pressure, the government approved a second attempt later in November 1932. This time, the soldiers adopted more patient tactics. Smaller groups, more careful positioning. Gradually, the numbers improved. By early December, official reports claimed nearly 1,000 emus had been killed. But even then, the results were underwhelming compared to the original 20,000-strong population. The birds adapted. They spread out into smaller groups, making mass targeting impossible. The military operation was called off permanently. Australia had lost the war. Farmers eventually turned to a more effective solution: reinforced fencing and bounty systems that paid civilians for emu kills. Over time, improved agricultural infrastructure reduced the problem. But the Great Emu War entered history as one of the most unusual conflicts ever recorded. No official treaty was signed. No surrender declared. It wasn't intelligence. It wasn't strategy in the human sense. It was biology. Emus are built for survival in harsh Australian environments. Their long legs allow them to cover vast distances efficiently. Their powerful muscles help them endure injury. Their scattered flock behavior makes them difficult targets. And most importantly, they weren't centralized. There was no single flock to eliminate, no headquarters, no command structure. You can't defeat what you can't pin down. Over time, the Great Emu War became something larger than a failed pest control operation. It became folklore, a symbol of nature's resilience. A reminder that technology does not always guarantee victory, and perhaps most importantly, a lesson in unintended consequences. The soldiers weren't incompetent. The farmers weren't foolish. The emus weren't invincible, but sometimes the environment itself fights back. The Great Emu War wasn't truly about birds. It was about post-war policy, about settling fragile land too quickly, about underestimating ecosystems that had evolved for thousands of years. It was about the clash between industrial ambition and natural reality. Australia would go on to become one of the world's largest wheat exporters. The emu would remain a national symbol, proudly displayed on the Australian coat of arms, alongside the kangaroo. Ironically, both animals were chosen because neither can easily move backward. They symbolize progress, yet in 1932, progress met resistance and lost. History is full of wars between nations, but sometimes the strangest conflicts reveal the deepest truths. In Western Australia, during the Great Depression, armed soldiers with machine guns faced off against flightless birds. The Great Emu War reminds us that control is often an illusion, and that sometimes the most unlikely opponent can teach the greatest lesson. In 1932, Australia went to war with emus. And the emus didn't surrender, they simply kept running.